3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
I love talking about just any level of human optimization, whether that's physical, whether professional, whether that's spiritual. And I know that your work touches on a lot of different areas. So I'm excited for this conversation and happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said, it's been an evolution. I think read a little bit about you as well, just kind of the evolution, and especially just trying to be the good father as well into your family, and that's kind of. And so I think this is another horizon for me from all the stuff I've done in the past. And I took some time to be a. I still work, but I had much more flexibility in my career path as opposed to my wife. That your typical 9 to 5 type thing. So it just it required so much, and I was hustling to get back because dropping the kids off when I set this appointment up. We didn't know what time school was starting, who had practice in the morning, who didn't. And so it's just been one of those rushing around everything. I'm still cooling off.
Gotcha. No, that's good. So I love that, and I think that's part of the realness that I think makes us really consider how to optimize our lives, right? Because you got to be able to be a little bit flexible when it comes to the work and the family part, especially to be able to be there for your kids. I love that you said that part. Has that been a kind of a driving factor in any of the work you've done up till now, or is that more of like a newer focus?
Both. And I always say it this way. I think if I would have had kids like my brother at 25, as opposed to late in my late 40s, I know a whole lot more at 45 than I did at 25. And I think at 25, and I've seen it, people are still struggling with, trying to make something out of themselves. And, how can you separate that with trying to also raise a family and also devote to your wife and everything? And so just being further accomplished in myself at that time, I was able to give back more to my family in the care they needed in the house. So I think that was I, how it happened, it just that's the way the river
Yeah.
flowed for me in my life. And then as I look back, I think that would separate, because I think my older brother always says, "You're such a great dad, Len." And I think it's just for the fact that at 45 versus 25, I had more grasp of what the real world looks like, and what's important and what isn't.
Yeah, that is true. And how does that relate to like your professional work? I know, like you said, you've got a lot of professional accomplishments. Like, how did you even get started in that realm, and what was kind of your driving factor for optimizing fitness?
Yeah, well, I've evolved, and right now, as told you, I'm the older guy. I don't like to say old. I'm the older guy with young kids and everything, high school kids, and they're coming out, getting ready to go into the next level of after 18 years of age. And I always say, what are you going to do after 18? Are you going to join the band, join the army, join the circus, travel the world? What are you going to do? And a lot of people really don't know. And sometimes people take the next 4 years at school studying something they really didn't know why. But mom and dad said you got to go to college. That's going to be your stepping stone. And they wasted all this, not wasted time, but a good percentage of them were following a field path that really wasn't what they come out. 5 years later, they're not doing what they were supposedly studying on. So for me, I guess my road was very varied, and I broke my back about 40 some odd years ago, 45 years, more than 45 years ago, gosh. And because of that, it just kind of got me more into the health venue. And but it took me another 10 years after I broke my back to finally get into the health fitness as a chiropractor, then as a nutritionist, a strength coach, and all that stuff. And so I knew what I wanted to do, as
Right.
opposed to, so many kids. And I think of my kids right now, trying to tell them. And I think the challenge in our house is my wife, she knew what she wanted to do right when she was like a junior in high school. And she's been doing that for the last 30 years of her life. And me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I switched careers, I was an actor living in Chicago, LA, Texas, working around doing stuff. And then all of a sudden, I finally get back into the medical health and wellness venue and everything. So everybody has a different path, and once you find your path, then it's kind of like I always say: once you know where you want to go, it's easier to pedal harder and faster and stronger, as opposed to if you don't know where you want to go. As I always say, if you don't know where your proverbial land of milk and honey is, you're just pedaling. And once you know, the sailor should never sail without knowing where he wants to go. But once you know where you want to go, then you can really start making the progress. And the challenging time when you're facing against the wind, and the time and the momentum you generate when you're with the wind. And so it's all about trying to find where do you want to go. And once you get those questions answered, and you know what's important for you, I think that really helps a lot.
Yeah. So in that same line of thinking, when you're trying to figure out where the destination is, I think most people would say, "Hey, I want to lose weight. I want to feel better. I want to, some other pretty vague destination." Does it need to be more specific than that?
It can be. When I was, as I would say, the first 25 years of my professional career as a doctor, it was helping people in the health and wellness, health and fitness venue aspect. And it was like, okay, where do we want to go? Well, I want to just lose weight, doc. I want to feel better. Well, what does feeling better mean? What does losing weight? How much do you want? Oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. And so I'm a big believer in the power of the mind. And if you know where you want to go, if you can see the scale saying 130 pounds instead of just going, I want to be skinny or I want to be thin, if you can just visualize that, put that in your mind, see that, and that's one of the steps as far as the sleep step. When you go to bed at night, do you sleep with a smile because you're closing your eyes, you're visualizing, seeing what it is you want to see happen in your life, and everything I've read, and I'm sure you may have read similar stuff also, just saying once you know the destination of what you want to achieve, where you want to go, it's easier to get there. It gives you direction. So many people, especially young kids, as we were talking earlier, at 18, they don't know where they want to go. They're just still swimming along. And once you finally know where you want to go, you can really make momentum with that.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I think for a lot of people, it becomes this it's easy to say what you don't want, right? It's easy to say, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to do that. But it's kind of hard to define, hey, should it be 130? Should it be 150? Should it be, a certain body fat percentage? Like, what does that look and feel like? And I think it's also difficult for people who maybe don't have an example in their direct lives to point to if they don't have someone, mom, dad, relative, friend who is quote unquote in good shape to be able to point to and say, hey, yeah, I want that. Right. So where does someone turn to?
For me, it was books. Just trying to find books. You have to find somewhere, some other source, because I didn't grow up in that positive attitude, this and the other. I grew up back in the 60s and 70s, and where your dad would kick you in the rear if you didn't do what he asked you to do and everything. And so it wasn't until I got out in the real world and was starting to pay for stuff myself, I go, okay, now I'm competing for various jobs, and what does he know? And you start just hearing from the circle of friends, they may be further along than you are in their walk, and they've already read this book and that book. And I go, huh, okay, let me read that. And I was recently asked this on another show. I said, yeah, one of my first books I ever read, and I'm sure you might have heard of it too. What is it? Uh, Dress for Success. One of the old classic books in there. That's back in the 80s and everything. I had Dress for Success. What does that mean? And then it just opened the doors to other books that I started reading, from The Power of Positive Thinking, Carnegie's books, all those things. And as far as, oh, what you think. And as I've gotten older with my patients, I would just realize, what you put in your head is no different than for the 24 hours you're facing the day, Monday through Friday, for like the professional athlete. When the athlete, whether he's professional or not, when you step up to the free throw line, into the batter's box, up to the microphone in front of the audience, you have to be ready. You have to tell yourself, I'm going to do a great job. You have to see yourself that way. And so often people don't realize that every day is kind of, there's something you have to kind of gear yourself up a little bit, to hey, I'm going to have a good day. So they're talking about just feeding the mind, making yourself feel, because you don't want to go in there. I always use the analogy, if it's the ninth inning, two outs and there's a runner on third base, and guess who comes up to bat? Not me. I mean, the last inning, but who comes up to bat? And you could sit there and say, "Oh no, he's like the worst guy on the team. What are we going to do?" You're going to feed him words of confidence, because you want him to step into that batter's box to do something well. You're never going to tell him anything negative. Say, "God, we ought to go home now because Johnny can't hit the ball," and stuff like that. So you're going to feed him some words of confidence. And so if you look at that as a microcosm of what every one of your days are, when you wake up in the morning and your feet hit the ground, What are you telling yourself? Like, oh, this is going to be a cruddy day. I God, I hate my job. I don't want to go to work. I didn't study for this. And so you have to just, whether you know where you want to go, but just to build yourself, as I say, you have to ready the ship. And you're the ship, you're the vessel. Can you make yourself more stronger, more self-esteem, more confident, and everything by just little words here and there? I'm sure you've read some of those books also. You don't have to repeat a magic phrase a bazillion times, but 30 seconds, a minute of telling yourself, I feel great, I can do it. I'm going to do great on this test when I give my presentation. You take that 30 seconds, a minute doing that. That's at least 30 seconds. You're not kicking yourself in the rear, cause just that negative mindset that so many of us, naturally fall victim to. We just get that negative self-talk gets into our head.
It's very true. And I think there's another element to it too. It's the preparation or the willingness to prepare and practice, not just save it for the game.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
And I think, right, that's obviously an analogy that's more appropriate for the athlete. But I think if you kind of zoom out and look at it in your regular life, most people think, you're going to practice, you're just kind of going through the motions, you're kind of giving it a half effort. And then when you get to the game, then you'll really pour it on. But
right.
when we look at that in our real lives, we look at the application of our efforts in terms of relationships, our professional career, like all of these things, it's so easy for us to just kind of half-ass it through the day-to-day stuff and then feel like, oh, when it's actually serious, then I'll pay attention to it. But we don't really realize that it becomes more serious way faster than we realize, right? So the next thing you know, the opportunity has come and gone, and you've missed it because you've just been in practice mode this whole time. Do
Right.
you see sort of the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of like when you talked about seeing yourself, being the conqueror only during the game. But as I always say, you look at some of the pro athletes out there, and a lot of the stuff I've read from them, visualization. They don't see themselves, doing the grinding stuff. They see themselves on the award stage, winning holding the medals around their neck, holding the trophy in their head. And so, and I love visualization because I call that practice without sweating, because you can sit there and close your eyes and see yourself in that victorious state and everything, and that just kind of it just gets into your system. One of the steps that of the 5-step thing I talked about, again, sleep. When you sleep, do you sleep with a smile? Because when you can close your eyes and practice seeing what you want to see happen, whether it's, I want to take this Caribbean vacation, I want a new house, I want a new car, I want a new job, I want that corner office, whatever thing it is you're trying to achieve. One of mine was, I wanted a wife and everything, because I'd gone so long without one and everything. And I started visualizing that. And as I shared with this not too long ago, that really came out exactly how it was. I used to visualize myself sitting there in the church there with my brothers and other friends there, my mom and dad out there, the audience out there, with this beautiful woman sitting down there in the back with this white dress, and never, I didn't know what she looked like, didn't know she's blonde, brunette, redhead, but I would just see her just racing down the road racing down the aisle saying, I do, I do, I do. That was my little visualization and everything. My wife hates when I share that story, but that's she didn't run down there like that, but it came out exactly the way it was. And so when you think about every day, when you walk out the door, I mean, so many people, they get up in the morning and the first thing they do, they'll grab their cell phone, they'll turn the radio on, they'll turn the TV on, and they never give themselves that little quiet time to feed self. And I know for some people that I've talked to, they say, well, I don't like it when it's quiet. I mean, I just don't feel right when it's quiet. And I always say, gosh, we've been doing self-help. People have been doing things by themselves for a long time. People sleep by themselves, people travel, people dine by themselves, people work out by themselves. You can motivate and inspire yourself. You just have to decide to do it. And for some people, they recognize that, as I did, not until the end of my third decade, my late 20s and stuff like that. So everybody starts recognizing that, and they can just, when you walk out on the court and when you walk out on that mat and everything, you better think that you're bigger, better than the guy on the other side. And so it's just, you have to feed yourself those kind of thoughts, not just for competition, but and just as far as being more than you are to get there, because life is tough. It's not a
Yeah.
cakewalk out there.
No, it's very excellent advice. And I think, even to shift to the nutritional aspect, right? If we're looking at even from a health and wellness, hey, you want to talk about calories in, calories out, right? There are some people who look at this as, hey, I am a fat person who is just eating a diet versus this is how I eat. And I think it's that mental shift to, right, who are you? And that's how you operate. Much the same way that you said, like you envisioned being at the altar waiting for your wife to walk down the aisle. Now you are acting as that future husband,
Right.
right? You already have the vision. Now you are acting as that person, just waiting for those two realities to meet. And I think when you do the same thing in all the areas of your life, especially, your health and wellness, where you say, hey, this is who I am. I might not physically represent it yet, but on the inside, this is how I mentally feel. And then you're basically just walking that out every day, waiting for those two realities to collide. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You have to what you as I said, if you don't know where your land of milk and honey is, you know, don't complain if you arrive at the land of heartaches and headaches. And so you have to kind of know what it is you want to achieve. And I don't know what the percentage is, but I know it's like young kids that say they want to be a pilot. A lot of time, people that want to become pilots, I don't know, you may be a pilot. They've had that vision by the time they're in the early teens. They just get mesmerized by that. Others get the same vision for being, I want to be a doctor. Something moved. I want to be a doctor. Oh, I want to be an attorney. Something have, once you finally find out where it is you want to go, that helps you in so many aspects of your life and your growth of yourself because you know where you're going. It's the people that wake up every morning that don't know what they want to do. They don't, they just think about, they go to bed at night thinking tomorrow's headaches, worries, fears, and anxiety about tomorrow that they don't focus on what it is they want to do, where they want to be. And again, you can't blame anybody because it's not the parent's job to say, but if the parent can help them learn that and realize that, kind of like the parent help teaches them how to eat properly, you know, that's part of the job, I think, of being a parent. What are you teaching them? If you live out in the wilderness in Alaska, far from anybody else, I'm trying to paint a real obvious example here, to where you got to get up and go hunting in the morning to get food to eat. And so, and you're in the city, what are you trying to do to prepare yourself for tomorrow? Where do you want to go for tomorrow?
But, I think that it paints a really interesting picture too. You look at when people are trying to be this best version of themselves, right? How do you accomplish that if you haven't seen it? How do you accomplish that if you haven't touched it, if you haven't talked about it, if you haven't researched it? And I think there's another really amazing portion of that we sometimes forget. Like you look at this young child who wants to be a pilot, right? And they have some driving factor that says, "Hey, I'm going to do all of these things in preparation of one day becoming a pilot," and it's a super exciting thing. It helps give them some motivation, some energy, kind of that pulling force into
Right.
where they want to be in their life. And I think for a lot of people, once they reach adulthood, quote unquote, they lose that. They don't have that thing anymore. It's just tomorrow is just a repeat of today with a different date. And I believe that having that pulling force that can really help get you to that next level, whether that's some big event, you sign yourself up to run a 5K, whether it's a different career path, whatever the thing is for you, but having a thing in your life that serves as a major milestone that gives you some incentive to drive toward, I think is a
Absolutely.
tremendous benefit, right?
Oh yeah, I think everything I've read just talks about if you know where you want to go, if you have direction. So many young kids that are in trouble, just struggling in their lives, they found out that they really don't have a destination of what they want to achieve. No one's taught them that, and so I don't know what the solution is, but I do know one of the answers is that if you know where you want to go, it's easier to follow the path to get where you want to be. If you want to be if you want to be, the pilot, another example, a pro athlete. If I'm, I want to be holding up the championship trophy, whether it be football, baseball, golf, soccer, whatever it is. When you start, okay, now I got to train hard. I got to train harder than you're training because I need to beat you to get to that next level. And so it motivates them. And you see a lot of kids, they're out there practicing. They have a destination. They want to get to the next level, whether it's just simply, I want to get a college scholarship. right? I want to make the team, whether it be, it could be for cheer, drilling, whatever, first chair in school, whatever it is. If you know what you want to go, it gives you some kind of direction to focus on, put your energy on, and that's why I say just the business world. Hey, I'd like to have that corner office, that's a step up from where, I'm here in the pool of employees out here. There's 18 desks in one room over here. But I want a corner office. Whatever it is you see, I want to be able to see myself, turn up my mortgage because I finally got rid of those payments, or whatever it is. You have to find something for yourself. And to go back to what we are talking about, health and weight loss a minute ago, it's the same thing. You have to see yourself at whatever number you want to see yourself. You have to see yourself stepping on the scale, and there's that number, and I'm afraid to say a number to anybody right now. You want to see that number that you're looking for, and so visualization, knowing where you want to go, somehow, some way. No, I can't explain it, but it starts pulling you in that right direction to where when the winds are against you, you can still make headway. And that's the thing, because it's so easy to get thwarted because of just a negative headache comes your way. The wind's blowing against you. Oh, well, we can just go around a little bit. But in the same way in life, as opposed to sailing, there could be some challenges that you get a different boss now. Who's not who's working kind of against you, or they have some pet person they want to put in that new office over there. So you just never know. But as long as you have direction, it gives you more purpose. And everything I've read, if you have some kind of purpose, some reason, it just helps you. Yeah, and those that just wake up and don't have any purpose for what they want to do tomorrow, or what they're trying to work to, it just makes it easier to get here or there, to get sidetracked in your efforts and everything.
Yeah. No, it's very true. And I think there's also a percentage of pressure we put on ourselves to understand 100% what that destination is. Right. So let's talk about that for a second, because, if we're bringing up this topic and we're talking to the listener of this podcast who says, all right, man, I'm struggling day to day. I don't know necessarily where the destination is supposed to be. Putting this pressure on themselves to define it specifically and say, hey, I'm locking this in concrete, that's the only place I'm going, might feel overwhelming to the point that they don't do anything.
Right.
Right. So is there an aspect of this where you say, hey, this is where I want to be specifically, and you start to refine it as you go? Or does it have to be set in stone from day one?
I think it could be both. If you have a set in stone thing that you want, the new car, whatever, the new office, new clothing, new wardrobe, that's great. But if you're not sure what it is yet, because you're still being reshaped, you're still being fine tuned, understanding, you're still gathering information on how to develop those mental muscles, for lack of a better name for it, is that you just have to start somewhere. You have, as I've said, you don't have to know where you want to go right now, but you can start readying the ship, okay, for sail. And that means just, build your self-confidence, build your self-esteem, just by just the words you feed yourself. I mean, we all know from the nutrition part of me, we all know you are what you eat. But it's also true, you are what you think. I mean, we go back to biblical times, they talk about a man is what a man thinketh. And so what kind of thoughts do you allow to fill your head? And everything I've read, research shows that we process about 50,000 thoughts a day. And I'm going, oh my God, 50,000 thoughts. And they say of those 50,000 thoughts, about 80% of them are from yesterday's events. And so 80% of your thoughts are yesterday's old reruns that you're playing. And of those, 90% of those thoughts are slanted on the negative. And when you think about it, Jim, I'm sure you've seen it, where you'll get 10 great reviews or 10 great compliments. That one person that tells you you stink, that's the one that just gnaws at you and everything. And so in our life, more than 80% of our thoughts are going to be slanted negatively. So you have to consciously put that positive 30-second, 5-second, a minute, just to pump yourself up, just to tell yourself, hey, I feel great. I can do it. I'm a winner, whatever lingo that's going to fit for your personality, right? Whatever it is you're trying. But you have to give yourself something like that. As I would say, the world isn't filled with born leaders and positive thinkers. Those are learned skills. And the question is, are you going to learn that? Because if you walk onto that wrestling match, you walk up to the court in front of the microphone, and you don't feel confident you're going to do well, you're there. you have a less chance of doing as well as you would like. And so when you wake up in the morning, when your feet hit the floor, are you telling yourself as you're walking to the restroom, are you just looking for the phones? You can put the music on, see who's liked me and stuff like that. Are you going to just take a minute or two just to remind yourself, hey, I feel great. Today's going to be a great day. I'm excited about today. I'm going to get closer to what I want. I'm going to do great on this test. I'm going to do great on this in this interview, on this podcast. Whatever you're trying to do, if you can just, it's great to have a coach, that's someone that can tell you, but that might only be once, 1 hour out of 24 hours in a day, every third day, every fifth day. You are your own personal coach as well. You have to just remind yourself that the little words of wisdom, little words of pep talk that help you get over the hump, because we are what we think. And if you keep thinking this isn't for me, that's not my turn, nobody likes me, whatever it may, whatever negative words that we can feel ourselves, which is very common, you're going to keep going along those avenues and everything. And so after you change, my little acronym for change is creating habits and attitudes now for growth and excellence. And so when you change, you're trying to change for the better, not for the worse. And so create habits and attitudes now for growth and excellence. That's all we're trying to do, is just improve where you're headed.
Mhm. So you mentioned before going to bed with a smile, right? Sleeping with a smile. Are there other habits or techniques that you would teach someone with that they can kind of implement in their course of their day that would help them move forward?
Well, that's exactly what, 5 steps is all about, just trying to teach you. I'm sure people have been tracking their physical status for the last several years. They're tracking their 10,000 steps on their watch, or they're closing their rink, or they're trying to improve their physical health. And so when I created 5 steps a day, it's just a simple way to help you track how you're feeding not just your physical body, but what are you feeding your mind? What are you feeding your spirit? Are you doing anything in that? Are you just kind of are you only just focusing on your physical body? And I think those 3 legs, the body, mind, and spirit, kind of set the foundation for you. And so, uh, doing your physical, and this is where where I grew up in the physical aspect of it, in the health and wellness, right? But it was like, I started just noticing as I got older, and in my early 20s, started reading various books. Wow, the power of the mind. I never thought about just what you tell yourself. And as I started equating it to sports, because I kind of grew up, I wasn't a good athlete, but I grew up an athlete. But it was like, if I walk up to the plate, if I don't think I'm going to hit this guy, I'm probably not. But if I walk up to the plate, say, you're mine. Kind of like Bull Durham does, I'm going to take you. And so that's just kind of the name of the game. And you can apply that not just to athletics, but you can apply that to where you're trying to, various arenas you're trying to enter, whether it be the work arena or your social arena, just as friendships and everything. What are you attracting to you? Just that negative mindset people? Are you attracting people that bring sunshine into your life?
Right. So for someone who is maybe not incredibly happy with where they're at in their physical fitness life, what is step one for them that they can implement like today, right after this podcast is over, or even pause it and do it literally right now? What is step one for them to make progress?
Step one, I'll tell you step one and step two. Step one is you got to know where you want to go. Okay. And so you have to make a decision on yourself. This is what I want to do. Step two is just making the right choices. I always talk, eat right, train smart. I mean, so many of the people I see, and I used to train the trainers, right? It's like burning calories. Okay. We talked about weight loss earlier. Burning calories is not the same thing as burning the fat and the flab. Anybody can burn calories. You can burn calories till the cows come home. But if you're not burning calories from stored body fat, you could be burning lean muscle for energy and not stored body fat. And so we have to make sure that we get your metabolism working properly. And if that means just making some better choices for yourself. So you are burning calories from stored body fat. And when it comes to training smart, because everybody's trying to, I'm going to start exercising. And the 3 pillars I talk about for both eat right and train smart. The first one for exercise is, exercise is another stress on the body. Can your body handle that additional stress? And for some people, I mean, just the way the body's designed, we can handle this much stress in our life, and we're right there right now, basically. And all of a sudden, well, I need to start exercising. My doc told me, or my friends told me, my wife told me, my husband told me. They start exercising, and now they put more stress on their body than their body can handle. They just started a workout program, and they're doing good for the first couple of weeks. but it's another stress on the body. It's not the same usual suspects of worry, fear, and anxiety, but physical exercise could be a stress. And, and the second part of I talk about exercise because so many people, probably the biggest mistake I see sometimes when people exercise is they think they're burning calories. They're burning calories, but they're not burning calories from stored body fat because they're training. I would say there's three basic questions you need to ask yourself before you work out. There's five, but here's the three and the two separate groups. Are you looking to burn? Are you looking to burn fat? Are you looking to build muscle? Can your ego handle the workout? And I mean, so many people, they want to try to work out the way they did 15, 20 years ago. But their body's not the same. I mean, once you get past like 35, you can work out wrong and you can diet wrong in your first 35 years of your life. But after about 35 or so, hormones are changing. You've had a lot of, there's more stresses in your life now. You may have a spouse you're dealing with. You may have children you're dealing with. You may have a mortgage you're dealing with. You have all these additional stresses on your body that you may not have had when you were 20. And a lot of times you start trying to work out because I'm not feeling the way I should feel. They start training and they're not getting the results. And those are the people I used to always see. And it's like, well, you're training like you think you were 20 years ago, and your body right now just can't handle that kind of workout. Let's slow it down. Let's focus on this workout today is going to be just a fat burning workout. Nice and easy. Okay. Tomorrow let's hit that. We want to get that testosterone going. Let's do something, whether it's just a hit workout. Huge fan of hit workouts, right? Um, uh, or you go to the gym or do something that's going to be that's going to surge that testosterone and growth hormone. For me, so many of the patients I see, they're working out. They think, well, this is too slow. I need to run faster. No, no, you can't do them both. It sounds good. Marketers will tell you that, but physiologically, once you know how the body, that's not how it works. And as I always tell most of the headaches I see for people that are in their late 40s and 50s, they're working out, they're not getting the results, and I go, you don't think that your workout, it's not your little heart beating 100 miles an hour that's going to move the needle for that testosterone needle. It's your skeletal muscles you need to activate and stimulate to get that testosterone surge. So your heart isn't going to do anything to get your testosterone surge. It's pushing those skeletal muscles. That's one of the other secrets out there.
And I feel like people who don't understand that or are aware of it maybe tend to think, hey, this doesn't work for me, and then give up.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, information is knowledge, right? I mean, when you have some information that's good and helping you, that can get you on the right track. And I mean, I can't tell you how many trainers I used to give in my office when I was in full practice. I would let a lot of my patients, because they would say, I'm working out, doc, I'm not getting the results and everything. Here, wear this heart rate monitor, go out there and come back. You should keep it right here. And they'd come back and say, oh my gosh. I mean, none of my patients ever came back with telling me that I was within my heart zone. They were all jogging, biking, swimming, dancing at, 85% of their max heart rate when they need to be around 70% because they're not that well conditioned yet. It's only the people that can train at 85% of the max heart rate are the Grant Fishers of the world, your elite runners, your elite cyclists, your elite triathletes. If that's not you, you need to slow your rear end down to get down to that 70% typically. That's where you're going to be burning the fat. And unfortunately, people say, it's too slow. That's not, I don't feel it. Most of the patients I would see are people that are like in their 40s or 50s telling me, doc, I'm basically the same size I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm wearing the same size clothes, basically the same weight, but I'm still working out 3 or 4 times a week and everything, but I've lost my composition. How come? The simple answer is that so many people are after about 35, they start thinking, I need to start doing cardiovascular training. That's going to be what I need so I don't have a heart attack. And yes, you need to do it, but are you doing it at too fast of a pace for what your level of conditioning is? And because of that, you're only burning sugars, carbohydrates, and proteins, not fat. And so that's why I say, are you looking to burn fat? Are you looking to build muscle? Or can your ego handle the workout? I mean, when I learned this 30 years ago, I was, I didn't want to work out in the daylight anymore because I didn't want to be jogging that slow. You don't look as manly. I was still single, right? You don't look nearly as manly out there with your shirt off when you're just barely puttering along. But I had to go that slow to get the results I was looking for, and I could just immediately see the difference. And when my patients come back, say, "God, this is," even some of I mean, I had people that were doing 80 miles a week. They'd come back and say, "That's going to be too slow, doc." But I had one very well known runner, and she was doing 80 miles a week, and she goes, came back 2 weeks later, and she got referred to me because I would think there are a lot of some international runners out there, and she goes, that's kind of slow, doc. And she came back 2 weeks later. She scared my receptionist because she says she has a bone to pick with you, doc, because she's not happy about something. Not sure what it was and everything. She comes walking in. She goes, "Doc, yeah, I've been following what you were talking about. I slowed my pace down to whatever the number I told her to slow down to." And she goes, "But I've gained 2 pounds. So I'm not happy. Now I'm 121 pounds. For her, 120 was her threshold, right?" She goes, "I've gained 2 pounds. I'm 121 pounds. I'm not happy, doc. So just, suck on that. But let me give you some love, doc." She goes, "I've noticed in these 2 weeks, I've noticed the muscularity in my arms and shoulder has gotten a lot better. I noticed I can cinch my belt one loop smaller now." So I like what I see in the mirror, but I'm 121 pounds and I'm not happy with that. "Oh, okay, now I know the whole story." I said, "Well, before, when you were doing all your 80 miles a week, here's your aerobic threshold, whatever that number was for her. You were always training just right above there. And because of that, you're only burning sugars, which is carbs and protein. When you slowed down and now you're training down here, now you're burning fat." And that's why she was able to burn the fat that was, the fat around her arms and shoulders. She retained her muscle. And so now she wasn't burning muscle for energy. She retained her muscle. And so she goes, "That makes complete sense now, doc. So I love you again." And then 6 weeks later, she came back. She nearly lost almost 4 minutes off her 10K time by just training slower for the next 6 weeks and for like 2 months. So,
Wow.
it's good information. It's just, trying to get on the right track to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. There's probably something to be said too there about understanding the difference that like the number on the scale doesn't tell the whole story, right? So it's
Exactly
obviously
right.
has a lot to do with your body composition and everything else. Which I think goes even further to say the more information that you can attain about yourself, your overall health, your body composition, your sleep, right? All of these things, the more information you can gain, the more strategic you could be about applying that information, right?
Oh, absolutely. Again, the ones that were always the hardest to convince about what they were doing were the trainers that would come to me because I'm trying to teach these people how this, but I can't get rid of this extra stuff back here. I can't get, until we find out what they're doing. I go, "Listen, you're just overstressing your body." Because now you're putting this more stress than your body can handle. You have more cortisol racing through your body, which is one aspect of the negative aspect, but you're also, because you're constantly going, 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 you're not allowing your body to burn fat when you're working out because you're going faster than you should be. So just slow it down a bit and get into that zone two. For those people that are like the numbers of the runner, zone two is the number you want to be at and everything. But a lot of people don't realize that zone two is different for everybody, because the zone two, just to get off on the sidetrack here, is just kind of like, it's about 70% of your max heart rate. And that's where most people should be, at the very upper limit, where that's their fat burning zone. The Grant Fishers of the world, right? Our Olympic runner here, the elite marathoners, triathletes, they can train at 80, 85% and still burn fat because they've conditioned themselves. Well, if you're 20 pounds overweight, you've deconditioned yourself. So instead of being your upper threshold being at 70%, it may be at 65%. If you're 40 pounds or more, you're even that much more deconditioned, and you could be down at 60% of your max heart rate. So, just walking, just a fast walk through the streets here could be enough to put your heart rate at 75, 80%, which tells us you're not burning fat. You're burning calories, right? You're producing energy, but you're burning carbs and protein, not stored body fat. And most people, they want to burn all that extra wood in the back of the house. And if you're not ever putting that in the fire, you ain't gonna burn. And so that's how the body works.
As we draw to a close here, I'd just love to ask if there's any other topics maybe we haven't touched on yet that you would love to kind of share with us. You seem to have a lot of knowledge, and I'd love to share that with our audience if we could.
Well, I appreciate that. And I guess everything I've always done for the last 25 years has been along the health and fitness venue. And over the years, just I've learned stuff with my patients, just started learning more and more. And that's how I finally came around in the last couple of years to create the my little 5 steps a day accountability program just to see, are you feeding your body, mind, and spirit? Excuse me. And so often people just, it's the same thing. Are you doing the things that are going to feed the body, feed the mind, feed the spirit? And if you are just, when I with my patients, I would always tell them when I was doing the health and fitness with them, imagine 21 steps in the sand in front of you. That's going to be 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. I don't expect you to take 21 steps after the end of the week because you did 21 great meals. But if you can visually see those steps, that's the progress you'll make if you take 15 steps forward because you have 15 good meals and 6 cruddy meals, right? And so there's something about the visually seeing that with my patient, I think was very anchoring. And so that's kind of how I evolved to, trying and checking out the 5 steps a day, which is the simple way to track how you're feeding body, mind, and spirit. And so I would just encourage anybody, if they're struggling anywhere in any one of those pursuits, uh, check out 5 steps a day. It's a simple app. You can download it. It's free. That'll just kind of help you see, hey, am I thinking a little bit better today? Before I go to bed at night, am I reminding myself that I need to put something positive in there? Because if you just let the subconscious roll around of the fear, worry, and anxiety about tomorrow, you may not. Well, what do we say? We know not to eat junky food before going to bed, right? Well, why would you fill your mind with junky thoughts before going to bed? So if you can just kind of shift that thinking a bit and say, let me start thinking of something I want to see happen for myself. Can I start doing that? And then again, just feeding your spirit. Are you feeding your spirit? I know there are a lot of people that are lost looking and been let down out there, but you have to, you may not need 20-inch biceps all the time, but if you ever do need some physical strength, it's nice to have it. And the same thing, you may not be challenged with any really tough headaches in life, but when they do come, and they will come, you have the spiritual strength inside you to help cope with whatever issues you're facing. And because again, they will come.
100%. I think that muscle, when you train your spiritual muscle, you rely on it way more and you realize how much you really need it in nearly everything, or if not 100% everything.
Oh yeah,
So I,
it
I'm,
touches
I'm totally,
everything.
yeah. But yeah, I just want to thank you for being here and for sharing your expertise. It's been a true honor. Where can we support you?
Come check out 5stepsaday.com. You can find Dr. Len Lopez anywhere. We put information out there, always just sharing videos and stuff about health and fitness and feeding body, mind, and spirit. So check out the app and everything. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. That would be great.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Hey, thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Happy birthday to